bike lanes and other infrastructure to get to and from school. And the idea is to have them have a voice in how they use our infrastructure and what needs they have for the future that we can then integrate into some of our planning documents. And I'm very happy to introduce our students who will present to you for a few minutes their findings. Thank you.
I left it sitting too long.
Yeah, I can do it first. That's the only way you can talk.
Good evening, council members and members of the community. My name is Brendan Fant, and these are my colleagues.
Awesome.
And we are members of the Environmental Studies Department for the UCSC, and we're also involved in the IDEAS internship program. And IDEAS stands for Impact Designs, Engineering and Sustainability through Student Service. So this program is interdisciplinary and it matches students with mentors throughout the Santa Cruz community to work on sustainability programs and projects across the city.
And so our group got set up with Ross Clark, and he approached us with the bicycle initiative. And there's two main goals that we wanted to help address through that, and that was to make the bicycle network serve all cyclists. That's, you know, the regular commuters like Micah, and then the not so often commuters. And also we wanted to double the bike trips taken within the city. And these both seemed actually really possible for us, but we needed to assess the city of Santa Cruz. So we used the target group of the UCSC campus, because it's really easy to survey them and gather information from them, and it's one location, so going to and from. And so we kind of put together a three-part system in order to analyze the roads. And we used collision history from each one of the roads, and we put that together with pretty much the safety of the roads, the BQI, which we explained is the quality standing infrastructure of those roads, and then the road use from a survey of the commuters.
So back in fall quarter, we put together a cycling survey, which was taken by UCSC students, faculty, staff, affiliates, and we had 443 people take it, and we had questions like where they lived at, what it was done for biking, what they take the metro, the shuttle, and it was also including a free response question. And what we found from the survey was commuting routes, where they would take, where they go on and off the campus. And as you can see on this map, the green means high and red means low. And what we got from the comments in the survey was people on Laurel say that there's too many bumps and cracks on the road. And we got from Bay Street riders saying there needs to be more lighting. And we filed all this data and we input it into the BQI, which is a scoring system made by San Francisco Department of Health. And it's a scoring system based on 100%. That's based on the quality of roads, and we calculated 152 road segments, and the average of those road segments was 67%. And we had factors like pavement quality, lighting, speed limit, street slope, bike lane width, and what we found from the BQI was this map illustrates the green means excellent, red means poor. And in the scoring, that had low scores was the alternate mission routes, which was King, Escalona, Westside Bike Route, and the Western Boulevard.
So the third part of our study was this collision report, which was provided by the Traffic Engineering Department. So this was a collision report from 2003 to 2012 with about 670 different documented vehicle to bicycle collisions. And so we wanted to overlay the locations of those collisions to the quality of the bike lane at those locations, and also take into account how many cyclists would be going through those intersections or those different road segments. So if we can go to the next slide, we will be able to look at some of this. And what we've determined is there's a few key areas regarding UCSC commuters that we feel should be the highest priority for improvements. For example, between Escalona and Mission Street, if you're on Bay, heading off of Bay Drive and onto Bay Street, going south, there's a lot of collisions there. And there are a lot of cyclists that use that route, especially in the later afternoon when they're coming down the hill. So we feel that there needs to be better lighting and better conditions for the bike lane at those locations, because as the sun goes down, it can get really dark in that corridor, and it's hard for people, motorists and cyclists, to see the roadway and to stay in the bike lane and be safe. And there's also on Laurel Street, just at the bottom of Laurel Hill, that was actually one of the most dangerous intersections in all of Santa Cruz, and we feel that there should be a lot of attention directed toward the Laurel and Walty intersection because it had the most amount of accidents and the most amount of injuries. And so we believe that there should be a lot of improvement focused toward that area.
And a lot of those improvements can come through that scoring system, that BQI, that safety rating, like we were kind of considering it. And this is kind of just a zoomed-in version of that last BQI map, where it shows you that alternate routes to Bay and Escalona, those don't have very good scores. But it also did show you that in comparison to the other ones, like we just said, Laurel and Bay actually do have pretty decent scores. But those still can be improved. So like we were saying, intersections are a big point for that. Pavement conditions and separation is another factors that would make roads just way safer for the riders. You want to talk about that?
One last point is, if we rewind one slide, you can notice a lot of accidents along Mission Street. And Mission Street is pretty poor. It's not very friendly for cyclists. So to encourage people to use the parallel routes, such as King Street, we would like there to be an improvement of the bike boulevard along King Street. So that would mean better pavement on King Street, possibly a dedicated bike lane, and as well as better lighting and signage on routes proceeding to King Street, saying this is an alternative route to Mission Street, and notifying vehicles that cyclists may take the full lane when conditions aren't the safest.
And all this information and all the stuff from our survey, we have inhibiting factors, amongst other things, is all going to be found in our report, which I think a lot of you guys have already. And we're going to be making changes to it until the 10th. And so if there's any other things you guys would like to, any other questions for you to ask.
I was just going to comment. I really liked the report in terms of how it linked some of our traffic safety data with the routing, so you could see exactly where some of these improvements might be looked at moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, because I guess there were about a little bit under 450 people responded. Do you think a wider survey would show different sorts of routes that might be prioritized? Because I know Delaware is a primary route on the west side for people to get around, and there it showed as moderate use. And I'm just curious. And then the other question was, because it's looking at safety data over 9 years to 2003, 2012, if there was any sort of improvements that were made that might have corrected some of those safety concerns, how those would factor in, because you're looking at data that's much older.
Yeah, on the survey, yes, I totally think so. We got 443 people, and we think we first had that survey get filled out in February, and over a month and a half long period was where we really got all those responders. And if we were to ask other people and get the survey going and be more descriptive and let it kind of be more free range in what routes people use, I think you can get really good information about the bike infrastructure. And you can have that at different points. We were on campus mainly and going through the UC Santa Cruz Facebook pages and Twitter accounts, and we were just outreaching through our own means. But yes, definitely. And then
I would like to also address that last point. Is we focused on the UCSC commuters. There is the Santa Cruz community has such a diverse amount of people that cycle, so it's not just the Santa Cruz UCSC community, but there's people coming from the east side, traveling to downtown and the different business districts. So I definitely believe there should be a much broader study done upon the areas where cyclists are commuting to and from where they live and where they work, or to the enjoyment or business sectors of the city. So I do believe there should be a much more in-depth study done. And then the second part of your question was
just in terms of how you look at there were some improvements, like when we've had accidents where the city then is taking some, resources to make improvements where there might have been issues. So how do you kind of factor them in? Because maybe it's looking at the accident data through the lens of it being something that's corrected already.
So there was a few improvements that we noted in our study, and High Street and Soquel Avenue, I believe, had some improvements that were implemented halfway between the collision report. And if you broke down the collisions prior to the implementation of the improvements and afterwards, it actually broke down pretty even. So there wasn't necessarily a reduction in the collisions, but that could be addressed, or one possible reason that the collisions might not have gone down is because more people could have been attracted to that area. So it could have been safer, but because there could have been more cyclists using that road because it was safer, that could have kept the accident numbers still at the same level.
No, but I thought it was great to see that with the mapping and also tying in the accident reporting with like the data for what kind of routes people use. So nice work.
So I just had a quick question about your data and how you prioritize. You prioritize Laurel Street probably because of the number of accidents, but when I look at this, I see the number of deaths on Bay Street, and to me that screams priority with there's no fatalities in any of the other streets that you reported. So I'm just curious why you selected it not to choose the intersection where there have been fatalities.
Bay and Mission in particular is where those two fatalities were, and Mission was kind of something that within our report over the last year we were having a little bit of trouble at going towards because we didn't know. We were doing an assessment of the bike quality, and there's not even bike lanes there, and it's not a place that we wanted even people to be riding. So that's why, I mean, priority-wise, what Laurel Street actually got, all three different categories that we assessed showed, leaning towards, Laurel Street needing attention. So that's how we made Laurel as a higher priority for Bay and Mission. Yeah.
I really appreciate the Becky bicycle environmental quality. And then just a couple of recommendations. Some of the low-hanging fruit, like you mentioned, this curb rolled out on Bay Street, that it seems like the city could address relatively easily. I'd be happy to set a meeting with Public Works about that and try to look at some of those smaller things. And then I'm hoping that you're going to activate your bicycle advocacy group, People Power, to push on some of the more difficult things like King Street. So, this is great, and I don't want to see your work wasted. I'm hoping that will inspire you to do even more work and force us to make the city better for bicycling.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest, and maybe you're already on this path of, we're one of the right places to present this to our Transportation and Public Works Commission. You could find, approach them to be on their agenda because they actually do more detailed work than we do on kind of prioritizing projects. And when Micah said correctly, we wish Public Works staff was here, but it's also equally important to get this in the hands of the commission because they do zero in on some of the details at the level you're looking at.
We have actually been in communication with the Transportation Advisory Committee from UCSC, so we're also trying to collaborate with them because the focus of our study was UCSC cycling commuters, so we do definitely want to incorporate and bring in stakeholders throughout the community to work together to improve the quality.
Yeah, so I can't read it all at once, but I'm listening to you because I've been sifting through all this. So you had 16% of commuters on Western, which is interesting, and suggesting improvements that you can see that could happen on Western. And I always assumed Western with just the grade. It's always interesting which routes people will take. Like, will people go up high because you can kind of manage that easier? I mean, because when I used to go to UCSC, it's always you kind of wipe yourself out by the time you got to class back in the day because the bikes then weren't like they are now. So you'd be huff and puffing and then suddenly you have to sit down and try and still have all your focused energy because going downhill is a world of difference. So High Street versus Bay Street versus Western as a commute route up to campus. I'm just curious about that. I was surprised at 16%, which is a higher number than I expected.
It was to and from. So I was just...
So that's combined?
Yeah, it's combined. Yeah. So I'm assuming that a lot of the people are going downhill. I live on Western, and I bike up it rarely when I have to.
Exactly, because I look at that that's what I've never gone up Western.
Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah.
And that's even back in the day when I could.
I still ride my cruiser bike up to UCSC.
I know you do.
I don't know about this bike technology.
Oh, you should have seen the bike I used to use.
All right, well, thank you so much. It was wonderful. We really appreciate you taking the time to present it, and thanks for the copies, and I'm guessing we're going to hear more from all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it.